Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken.
Hey, Kiernan.
Oh my God, 200 episodes young, Ryan. I'm feeling jazzed, feeling good, feeling a little proud. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like just yesterday we were sitting in Brooklyn Heights on the promenade, looking out over the city. And
I mean, we weren't on the promenade. We were on a deck overlooking the promenade.
It felt like we were on the promenade, though. It was very nice.
Oh, we're men of the people, We're men of the people where we wanted to see the people down on the promenade, but just be a little bit behind them.
Yeah. And you kept me to a 6-pack that night, and that's why we ended up with a travel show.
And we're not talking about your abs. And that's right. We brainstormed, and there was just a flood of ideas for a travel podcast, which made us not start the politics podcast that I was pitching. Though I have to think the ratings of a politics podcast might be a little better these days.
It's maybe. I think of you and I as collectively as the Joe Rogan of the left.
Wow. Well, our numbers certainly don't prove that out, but okay, it's something to shoot for. Now, Ryan, I feel in honor of 200th episode, we do have to stick to form because I think we're both so excited for today's episode that it could be easy to break the predictable format. But I like routine, so we're going to do the top A block here. We've got a great interview, and then the last stop as usual, and of course the interview, Ryan. I mean, we are blessed. We are so grateful. We have the return of Rick Steves, the godfather of Out of Office, here to celebrate our 200th episode.
It is so great to have Rick back again for 200, and I'm so thankful that he came on.
He's just, again, sitting down with him. First of all, just how genuine he is. It just kind of washes over you. It makes you want to be a better person. It actually, as I was doing it, I was thinking, man, Ryan could really use a little dose of this, because it makes you want to be a better, a more moral, community-minded person. And it did, again, just occur to me, and I know we've said it before when we've, touched on the quest for Rick Steves to get him on the show. He really has informed so much about how you and I like to approach travel. He calls it a temporary local, living like a temporary local. And you have been so living that lifestyle over the last year where, you actually gave up your New York City apartment and you've been constantly on the road. And what I liked about it and really admire about how you've done it is you've been spending a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in a place so you truly can embrace that local life.
Yeah, I mean, it has been interesting. I mean, obviously there are the Latin American cities I've gotten to spend a lot of time in, and coming out to Europe and trying to be like a local and having like the days off and the nights busy makes it a little even easier to be kind of a local, because you get into that coffee routine in the morning, and so yeah, it's been cool. I definitely try to hold to that, Rick.
And in honor of your travel life, we do have to, of course, include the Judy alert, which is what we call the segment where I ask you where you are, so that your mom, Judy, who you're lightly neglectful of, I would say, she can rest her head at night and know that you are safe and sound and have some sense of where you are.
Yeah, so
you're not going to even fight back about the lightly neglectful.
No,
I'm trying to bait you here.
I'm about to go spend a whole month in June. So I'll be coming at you
June with Judy. It could be we could do a limited series. June
we get her on
Judy.
The pod. Yeah. So I flew on Monday morning incredibly early. I will do anything to save $6 on a flight. So I got like a 6 a.m. flight out of Cluj, Romania. And I flew here into Sofia, Bulgaria. And that's where I am right now. I'm in Old Town, down here in chilly Sofia.
Are there heavy communist vibes, post-communist vibes?
Yeah, I mean, the architecture is seriously communist vibes. Yeah, it's more of that than Romania, which I thought was kind of like kind of felt very kind of Soviet, but this definitely has that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be such a great series of episodes, and as I've mentioned, I'm trying to book many of these Eastern European destinations as good family-friendly travel, which will be very different than how you're experiencing them. But I particularly cannot wait to have you recount on a Transylvania episode the whole Dracula's castle experience.
Yeah, Transylvania will be a lot of fun to talk about. But I didn't make it to the Bran Castle.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Is that a joke? Last time we talked, you said you were going.
I was supposed to go, and I ended up not being able to make it. But as we always say,
what were you doing? you went to Romania and you didn't go to the castle. You should be stripped of your travel podcast.
Well, it's not the real castle anyway. I was in Brasov and I was in Cluj and I had my Transylvania experience, but I just sort of missed the boat on Bran, and I wanted to go, but ultimately I just I didn't make it.
Guys, this is not an act. I'm just finding out about this for real on the podcast, and my head is in my hands, and I am there is a breaking point of reason to go back, and the fact that you didn't do we always have the fun thing. I want you to ride the funiculars. You never ride the funiculars. Reason to go back. Isn't that funny? Ha. But you literally didn't do the reason that most people go to Romania. How far away from it were you?
I was not that far away. And I should have done it. But do I regret it? I don't know that I do, because I enjoyed Brasov. I saw a lot there. I saw a lot in Cluj. All
right. So here's what you're going to have to do as penance for this. We're also a Catholic podcast, of course, quietly a Catholic podcast. And by the way, I've got a great Catholic last stop for the 200th episode. I'm very excited about it. And it even links to a previous episode, which is even better. You're going to need, and I'm not joking, I expect this. To match up to your Romania episode, you need to get a Bram Stoker expert or somebody representing the castle to come on for a short interview to tell us to fill out the experience you missed for our listeners who are going to Romania.
Yeah, no, I know that I should. I've considered it, and I did go to a Romanian.
Considered it. Do you hear the flim flam, everybody? This is the Ryan Davis that I know and love. This is, spinning it. I'm not even sad that I didn't go. Yes, you are. You're ashamed.
I am a little sad.
Of course you are. When's the next time you're going back to Romania? And
can't wait to get back.
And you did kind of skim over. What exactly did you do instead that was so important? Don't say work, because I know some of your coworkers. All right, so don't say work.
No, I think I think I probably slept in that morning.
My God.
And I again.
Who's good at sleeping during the day? Dracula.
Yes, he had to. Hey, but I did go to a Romanian puppet show.
Well, of course, the famous thing you're supposed to do when you go to Transylvania, the puppet show.
They love puppets there. It's a huge thing, and we're going to have on a puppet expert, a Romanian puppet academic, to talk about it. So
you know what? I am fully supportive of, because I actually I go to this puppet theater here in Boston with great frequency. It's called the Puppet Showplace Theater. It's actually in my book. It's been around for 50 years, which is pretty amazing for a nonprofit to survive in theater.
The kids like puppets?
Years. Kids love puppets, and it was started by an elementary school teacher who saw how effective puppets were in teaching children. And she started this small puppet theater. It's expanded since. It's amazing. And actually, puppets are an ongoing theme through a lot of my travels. Kath, I used to go to a great puppet theater when I lived in London called Little Angel Theater. And when Catherine and I were in Vietnam, we went to what's called the water puppets, which is a traditional form of puppetry in Vietnam. And there are amazing forms of puppetry that are really important to cultures all over the world. So I actually think that's a great idea for an episode. And in fact, one of my college roommates did a whole year-long study, like after we graduated, in Buddhist puppetry, which is like a type of shadow puppetry that all around. She traveled all around Cambodia documenting it. So you've recovered by tapping into my love of puppets.
Yeah, no, puppets are cool, and they're spooky, so they got Transylvania vibes. And Cluj is not a big town, but they have 2 puppet theaters. So
wow, 2 puppet theaters. Boston only has 1.
Yeah. So,
Ryan, it's been a real emotional roller coaster with you. I have to say, I'm pretty disappointed in you here on the 200th episode. But what would it be if I wasn't a little disappointed in you?
It's hard to understand you with all the stuttering.
All right, so it's time to talk about a couple of the reviews we've been getting. And it sounds like you want to start with the negative. The negative, we've got a couple positive, which we appreciate, but here's the thing about the negative reviews that we get. Well, first off, let's just say 200 episodes. We don't ask you for any money, which would be wonderful to change in future episodes because we're kind of tired of losing money on podcast, as all podcasts do. But if you could go leave a review, even just tap the 5 stars, but preferably a written positive review. And some of today's reviews reveal some important truths that Ryan and I have overlooked. So let's start with the negative. Everybody knows we have a hater online named Cornhusker55. Cornhusker55 apparently has a friend who is named C_A_24, who, by the way, I did a little research, could not find any other reviews written by this person. But the person was so absolutely inflamed after, I believe it was probably the Vatican episode, and wrote
You did
the following.
talk a lot in that one.
I talked a lot, but we got some great feedback on my talking. Some Instagram comments saying, "Oh, Kieran is so passionate." Blah blah blah.
Okay. That's how you read that, yeah. Okay.
So, and by the way, yes, that's how I read it. I read it as not Kieran talked too much. By the way, I hate when we get a negative review that specifically names me as the problem, because at least if they just say it about the podcast broadly, I can argue to Ryan it's on him. Right. This one specifically spells my name correctly. The person, the person wrote the subject line is and yes, I'm doing it purposely right now, just in case this person's listening, and I'm hoping they are. 2 stars. Which is always an interesting place to land, 2 stars. Not fully committed.
Well, that's because I'm on the pod. So
sure.
It would be 4 stars if you brought your A game.
Yeah,
so.
Maybe it would be 3 after they realized you went to Transylvania without going to the castle. I love travel podcasts and wanted to like this one, but I couldn't get past the stuttering from Kiernan. The stuttering from Kiernan is what they said. Quote, unquote, and quote, the unquote, over and over and over again. Okay, so here I do think that occasionally when it's a real fact-packed episode and we're not just chatting, but we have to keep going back to this kind of the source material or
Wikipedia.
No, not Wikipedia. Don't say that. We go way deeper than Wikipedia. We only talk about places we visited, and we do research. We read books and magazine articles, and we bring it all together with our own experience to deliver a very unique form of content. Don't undersell yourself, Ryan. And this person, I think, was bothered by the fact that, sometimes there's a little, you're trying to reference a fact and figure out how to do the weave into the podcast episode. And if anything,
was that intentional?
Yes, it was intentional. Okay. I think it's charming. I think it's real. It's trying to make you feel like you're actually talking to us. We could edit those things out, but do we really want to pay Archie more to edit out all of those? I don't think so. And one of the broadcast icons who I interned for, who I absolutely love, who I think was a brilliant interviewer, was a man named David Letterman. And this was something that I feel that I've internalized from my own love of his broadcasting style, because he would do this. And I always thought it made him feel very spontaneous and very real. And so for C_A_24, I just have to say I'm sorry that it doesn't work for you, but the show's fans, nobody else, they've never complained about that.
Whew, that was rough.
It was rough. All right. So now
I'm glad you're editing this episode.
Now on the positive reviews. One takes on Cornhusker 55 fully. We love Jen Penoyer. Thank you, Jen Penoyer. Super fan of the podcast. You've reached out before. We always appreciate it. She wrote Day Trip Santiago, 5 stars. Congratulations, Ryan. Says a rebuttal to Cornhusker 55. Strong. That is strong for episode 200. This show is fantastic. I eagerly check every other Tuesday morning, and it used to be every. That was Ryan's decision, everybody. I would still be doing weekly if I could. But Ryan likes to moonlight on other podcasts, and then they sort of fizzle out. I think you're on episode 3 of your other one right now. Really looking forward to episode 10. I'm sure it's going to happen. A rebuttal to Cornhusker 55. The show is fantastic. I eagerly check every other Tuesday morning and listen immediately. Ryan, misspelled, but that's okay. I kind of like when you disrespect Ryan like that. Ryan and Kiernan, spelled correctly, are so much. Oh, Ryan and Kiernan are so much. I guess that's positive. I love
that's positive, right?
Past trips I have taken,
Valparaiso.
Wow, you're correcting my Spanish. Amazing. And Santiago. And she goes on to praise even further. So thank you very much, Jen Penoyer. And then, true to our Romney Democrat roots here, we got another one from a guy named Pistol Petey. Great screen name. Fair and balanced. Love the OOO podcast. You guys should make a Paris episode. Now, listen, Pistol Petey, you did a great service here, because I do always say, if you leave a review, pitch an idea for what you want to hear us talk about. And I got to say, I'm completely disgusted that we've gotten 200 episodes in and we've never done one episode on Paris, let alone a series. Ryan and I have both been to Paris many, many times. We have hidden secrets. We have takes on popular destinations. So Paris is going to be absolutely one of the next episodes we do. I would say in the next couple months, we're going to get to Paris. Absolutely. For all those people heading to Paris for summer.
Yeah, I wanted to go to Paris this trip, but I ran out of time on my visa. So I'm going to pop over there, I think, in September. But obviously, we should do a Paris episode. We've talked about Notre Dame.
We've done Notre Dame episode. We also talked about in our episode about industrial landmarks that have been turned into cultural landmarks. So we've touched on Paris. We've done a lot of news on Paris, but we need to do a first-time visit to Paris, second-time visit to Paris. There's so much great stuff there, and including I've done kind of all the big touristy ones. And then I got the Secret Paris book of the series that I wrote for and did a bunch of the stuff in there. And I have a lot that I would recommend. So we will 100% do that episode. So this is exactly why you should be writing in those reviews, everybody. Now, Ryan, before we got to take off, we're getting long here, but I do want to say one thing. While Rick Steves and I talk about, sorry, I shouldn't just call him Rick. I mean, Mr. Steves, Master Steves, Godfather of OOO. By the way, I don't know that he accepts that title, but we like to call him the Godfather of Out of Office. Rick has a fantastic book out that we're going to talk about on the show. I'm going to be holding it here. It's called On the Hippie Trail. And On the Hippie Trail came out in February, and it's an edited version of his diaries that he kept when he was 23 years old on a journey from Istanbul to Kathmandu. And this includes, he went through Iran just before it got closed off as a travel destination to Western travelers. So this is such a snapshot in time. I loved the book. One of the most underappreciated parts of the book is yes, the audiobook would be a great way to experience, but the physical book also includes a ton of photography he took all along the way. And it's so cool to see Rick Steves at 23, piano teacher from Washington, finding his feet under him as a traveler. And he has a lot of the same sort of wit and passion for travel. And there's emotional ups and downs. And he's not always just, loving it and laughing and so happy to be traveling. There's tough moments. There's funny moments. There's a lot of sickness because they were traveling very cheaply and eating food that gave them, a fair amount of indigestion. And the pictures really bring it to life, this sort of shaggy hippie going on this life-altering trip that really was the inspiration for him to turn from piano teaching to travel. And it's what inspired the creation of his Rick Steves bus tour company, and then eventually the books, and of course the empire and the media star that he is today. So it is it's an origin story that I cannot recommend enough. And we don't talk exclusively about that in the interview, but I wanted to give it a plug here because it's like the book I didn't know I needed, but God, I love it. So we'll throw a link in the show notes, of course. And he gives a special free way that you can read the entire book that I'll leave for the interview.
Fantastic. I am super excited. I'm going to give it a listen, I think, because I want to hear. I love Rick's voice so much, and I feel like he'll, you get to talk to him all the time. So for me, that's sort of how I get my Rick time.
I feel like he'll be listening to this going, that might be overstating it a bit. All right. Well, Ryan, with that, I think it's time to take off to our most exciting destination, a chat with the man himself, Rick Steves.
Oh, the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
Well, our returning guest today is a travel luminary. For over 2 decades, he's been hosting his PBS travel show, along with lots of great specials that will be very familiar to the Out of Office audience. And in February, he published On the Hippie Trail, Istanbul to Kathmandu, and the Making of a Travel Writer. The book consists of the journal entries of a 23-year-old Rick, a piano teacher with a bad case of wanderlust, and much of the adventure presages the career traveler Rick would become. So it's time to welcome the founder of Rick Steves Europe. Welcome him back, Mr. Richard John Steves. Thank you for coming on Out of Office.
Oh, thanks, Kiernan. It's good to be with you again.
Absolutely loved the book. And prior to the interview, I'm going to give a little bit of a book report on it and a review. But I want to invite you to share the story of actually rediscovering the Hippie Trail diaries from 1978. What brought you to the box that had been hiding it? And what was your initial reaction looking back 40 years?
Well, it is a fascinating sort of accident to me how when I was 23 years old, I had this coming of age trip going, on the Hippie Trail from Istanbul to Kathmandu. And I wrote about it, and I wrote diligently on doing this thing. And this was, the Hippie Trail was what backpackers and kids were doing in the 60s and 70s. The Beatles went to India to hang out with the Maharaja Yogi, and I had done Europe for several years, and I needed something a little more exciting. So I got a hold of my favorite travel buddy, and I whispered in his ear, "Go east," because we had already done Europe.
A young man, right?
Go east, young man, yeah. And we did this thing, and it was the perfect time in my life. I was 23 years old, just out of college. It was the last year anybody could do this trip, 1978. The next year, the Shah fell, and Khomeini took over, turned Iran into a theocracy. The next year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan and turned that into a war zone. And by the time you could travel in that area again, people were flying, and it was a different sort of vibe. So all that was right. And I did this trip, and I wrote about it in a crazy, I was a piano teacher. This is a selfish thing. I just love journaling. And it's like netting butterflies and then pinning them on the wall, when I would every night write everything that happened that day and think about it and try to draw meaning from it. So I wrote this 60,000 word journal. And it just, when I got home, I read a few pages of it, and I knew it was there. I didn't forget it, but I just never got around to reading it. And then during COVID, I had some time, and I read it, and it was just vivid. And it was like an anthropological dig into a 23-year-old version of myself. I'm exactly 3 times that old right now. And it was vivid and it was thoughtful. It was in the rough, it's just, I was a naive, kid running around the world, but it was the essence of good travel. And I really like the subtitle of the book, Kiernan. It's The Making of a Travel Writer. So I was not a travel writer. I loved my work teaching piano. I wanted to do that all my life. 2 years later, I gave up. Oh no, right when I got home. I mean, the last words in the book were, I gave up my piano students, turned my recital hall into a lecture hall, and started a small travel business. And when I look at it now, I look at it as a sort of as I said, an anthropological dig, a sort of a sorting through all of these random eurekas. And it was sort of a compost pile from where everything I've done since grew.
Yeah.
And it's just so cool, just personally, to have that surviving. And I also documented it, I got to say, beautifully with photographs. And
absolutely. Yeah. That was a real surprise to me when I actually got my hands on the printed copy, as I knew it was coming. I had considered doing it as an audiobook, but I was so happy to actually get the physical thing because the pictures are a huge part of the appeal.
Because, the good as the written stuff is, without the photographs, it would be tough to make it a great book. And, I did a lot of journals. Every year I bought a hardbound 200-page empty book, and I just religiously filled it up. My penmanship is gorgeous. I can't even read my penmanship now.
Yeah.
But I was just so weirdly diligent about it. And when I started writing guidebooks, I didn't have the bandwidth to do the journals anymore. So that was the end of the journaling. But I have this 7-year period where every year I've got a 200-page hardbound journal. And this is the one that happens to have the photographs. I photographed it as if I was on an assignment illustrating a great trip for a book, but of course I wasn't. And it just photography back then was something a lot of younger people can't hardly imagine. You had a canister, it had 36 frames in it.
Right.
And you had to travel with it, and you didn't know if it was working until you got home and you sent it in and you got it back. And
right.
I got to say, there were times when I had great experiences and the film just was lousy and I didn't have any good pictures. But this just worked out perfect. It survived. And then with COVID, discovered it all, put it together. My publisher loves it. And they just said, we got to do this thing right. And we did. And it got to number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. I've never been near that before. And for me, it's just a fun excuse to kind of celebrate the origin of things that I've been teaching now. This is what I do. My whole mission with my 100 colleagues here in Seattle at Rick Steves Europe is to equip and inspire Americans to venture beyond Orlando. And this was the first time I had done that, really. And it was a great trip.
You mentioned so there are other journals. Oh, did those precede this journal, or did it continue on for a bit when you got back?
They go from 73 to 1980, I think.
And primarily Europe?
Yeah, Europe. A little bit beyond Europe. I did Central America during the Sandinista and Contra stuff, but mainly it was my 2 or 3 month European adventures every year. And I got to say, I haven't had time to look at those journals, and I think there's probably another book hiding.
That was my next question, of course. I mean, so I'm a Star Wars buff, and along with being a Ricknick, and these are. It seems to parallel path with Star Wars, where these are kind of the prequels that a lot of your fans were waiting for.
Well, that if you followed what I've done and everything, you go back to this trip. And you can see where I got my passion for different things. I mean, one thing I learned was the value of travel information, because there wasn't much there was no real information for this Hippie Trail trip. It was scary. I measured the distance between Istanbul and Kathmandu, not by kilometers, but by borders you had to cross. These were scary hurdles. You never knew if you were going to get through a border because there's so much red tape and bureaucracy and corruption con artists and people selling stuff that'll get
quarantine requirements or medicinal requirements, all
that kind of stuff. And then, you stick out as a bunch of rich, stupid white guys from America and all these savvy people at every border. It's just like you're going into this den of thieves. And it was an exciting adventure, but there was no safety net. There was no internet. Your parents couldn't swoop in and help you. They had no idea where. When I left Istanbul, heading east, I remember it occurred to me, nobody knows I even exist between here and Seattle. and I didn't know a single soul between there and Seattle.
Yeah.
And here I was heading off that way. And we kept thinking, each day it was rugged travel. We kept thinking, it's not too late to turn back and go to Santorini and hang out in the Greek Isles.
Well, and I mean, it even starts, it's obviously a time capsule with the feeling of the lack of technology that we all have today, but it even starts where your travel companion you lose right at the start, and you go, am I ever even going to find my friend Gene, to do this whole trip with?
It was so funny, at the airport in Frankfurt, and we didn't connect at the airport. And then somehow we had a backup, go to Lucky Track 13 at the train station.
Uh-huh.
It's like a dog with my tail between my legs. I'm going back into town. I can't find my buddy. What happened? So I go to the track in Frankfurt, and there he was. And then we headed east. And, the trip was so good. One thing I like to do when I'm showing off the book to people is I just opened up, I do pin the tail on the donkey kind of. I just open the book to a random page, and then I plop my finger down and I read that paragraph. And it's just nonstop travel fun. It was the greatest trip, and it's fun to have that. And then it just the takeaway of the book, Kiernan, is that you can't do the Hippie Trail today from Istanbul to Kathmandu, but you can have your own Hippie Trail experience.
Yeah,
and the idea is to get away, realize that you can learn more about yourself and your home if you leave it and look at it from a distance, and to realize that culture shock is not something to avoid. It's a constructive thing. It's the growing pains of a broadening perspective, and it just needs to be curated. But this is the fundamental thing about good travel: is it changes you. It's a lot of people like this idea that travel can be transformative. That they throw that around a lot in the travel industry.
Yeah.
Well, I do too, and I take it seriously. Travel should change you. And if all you do is fly halfway around the world and go golfing with a bunch of fellow Americans in a fancy international style hotel, you're not going to go home changed. But if you get out of your comfort zone, and that's what the Hippie Trail was all about, and that's what Rick Steves' style of travel is about to this day.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a lot of things that I think will surprise people that know you only for Rick Steves' Europe, right? Because you're often a reassuring presence, letting people know that they can feel comfortable abroad. You're sort of avuncular. And in this, you're lost and shaggy and smoking marijuana for the first time. And you've got parasites and dirty sheets. And, it's just a really different Rick Steves than what people like me know you for. But it does have that Star Wars quality of like, oh, wow, he's on a bus, just like the bus tours he will go on to lead 30,000 people a year on.
Yeah. And it's just, the window rolls down. That's so great. Oh, there's vomit crusted on the outside of the bus from yesterday, the person who was sitting in my seat yesterday. There's that kind of, on that flight out of Kashmir, an old propeller jet, I walked back to the toilet, and I all of a sudden I realized, I'm looking straight through the toilet at farmland.
Yeah. Right.
And it's just like the weirdest thing. And I thought, now I'm going to fertilize. And there's just these sort of kind of juvenile, but wonderful adventures of on the road. The guy I met in Kabul in Afghanistan that wanted to remind me that a third of the people eat with their spoons and forks like me, a third of the people eat with chopsticks, and a third of the people eat with their fingers like I do, and we're all civilized just the same. Right. Well, there's a message there. That's a powerful message. And had I not written it all down in a journal, I would have forgot these things. It would have been a real shame. So it's a celebration of the value of journal writing. And
that's actually exactly where I want to go with this, which is, obviously we have the benefit today where we can all take pictures endlessly, and pictures can bring you back in a certain way. But how did it make you reflect on the value of writing about your experience in real time when you get back, or recording your experience?
I think journaling is a discipline, and it sharpens your ability to observe, and it sharpens your ability to learn from what you observed. The mechanics of writing it down and crafting those paragraphs and coming away with, well, so what, and then you draw results from that. It's a beautiful thing. I think it helps you observe better when you try to write it down. And it's like, I just love that metaphor. It's like netting butterflies that flutter by. And when you travel, we always call it magic moments. That was a magic moment. But I don't care how good your memory is, you just can't remember it vividly after a long time. And when you write it down years later, it kindles those memories. And what's not to like about that?
And you put a discipline around it where you were committed to about 1,000 words a day.
Yeah, that's about it. And this was nothing new. I did it every year. I've got a journal from when I was 18 years old of my first Eurail trip around Europe. And, at the end, in the appendix, I've actually got a list of every hotel and how much it cost. And then I divide it by how many nights and find out, it cost us, we spent $1.30 a night for the two of us in hotels on average. And it's just fun to have that diligence. And I don't know where it came from, but I remember I have very little respect for somebody who writes a journal on a spiral bound steno pad. People do that. And it's just, why are you doing this on a disposable steno pad?
Right.
And it was a ritual. I would buy a hardbound, beautiful 200-page, what they call an empty book. And then I would even do a little check, 3/4 of the way through the trip. I'd see how many pages I have left, how many days I left, how much I'm doing on average. And do I need to have a smaller font, basically?
Right. Because you didn't want to have to buy another book.
Well, you wanted it to be one volume.
One volume. Yeah.
This was 1979. So, that's on the Hippie Trail. And by the way, if people want to read it and not buy the book, in the end of the book, I say, if you'd like to see the what do you call it, scans of each page, I photographed every page of the actual journal. The original journal, we smoothed it out for the book and made it easier to read.
Yeah.
But we kept the spirit of it and the roughness and the honesty of it. But if you want to read the actual original journal, you just go to my website, ricksteves.com and /Hippie Trail, or you can find it. It's really clear where it's at. But you could just go there immediately and look at it if you like and read it through. But the book is nice because it's got all the photographs and the pull-out map and all of that.
Well, and I feel like there's a link to a little-known chapter in your bibliography, which is you did write an Asia Through the Back Door, picking up on the success and of Europe through the back door.
I did an Asia Through the Back Door book, and I also did a journal of my trips to Nicaragua and El Salvador called The Blood on Your Banana.
Yeah.
I published a 64-page journal, and I personally delivered that thing to every representative's office, every congressman's office in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
I just went in the garbage can, but I just felt a real need to bring back the value of traveling there and seeing the humanity of what's going on in Central America and the impact of American foreign policy there. But in our website, we've got everything on our website is basically free, and all of our TV shows, 800 hours of radio, all of my audio tours and so on. So it's a good resource. And there's about 100 hours of lectures of me talking about everything from cruising and packing light to Norway or Ireland and art and history. And if people like my stuff, I just love teaching.
And finally, I'm just interested in hearing what projects you're working on now. Any books upcoming that we should keep an eye out for?
Oh, thank you. I'm heading off to Europe in about 2 weeks. I was just in Istanbul last week. My big project right now is I'm doing 4 one-hour specials on the 4 greatest cities in Europe. The 4 cities. We have 40 different itineraries. We take 30,000 people on Rick Steves bus tours around Europe every year. And of those 40 itineraries, 4 of them are just one city for 7 days. And it's London, Paris, Rome, and Istanbul. So I want to those are the cities I just really love and know. I was just in Rome and Istanbul filming the 1-hour shows there, and they're in post-production now. And in a couple of months, I'll go to London and do that. But we're working on that. We just released my new symphony, Europe, A Symphonic Journey, performed by the Cincinnati Pops. And that's a musical journey through 7 different countries in Europe, enjoying romantic music from the 1800s, which served as a bugle call in the battlefield for romantic national causes as countries were earning their independence. And that's you can see that if you support public television, you'll find all my stuff on the app, the PBS app, and you can find it on my website. Anyways, so that's a big deal. my most important 1 hour of philosophy of traveling in Europe is out in a new show called Experiencing Europe. And that's airing around the country right now. And then the ongoing grinding thing we do is just keep our books up to date. So I'm flying to Barcelona, Prague, and London in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I've got guides waiting for me. And I'm there alone, just with local guides and the current guidebook, and checking it out and making sure it's good next time around.
Well, we appreciate all the work. It comes through in the books. And I can't help but also plug to you. I published my own first travel guide this year, Secret Boston, which is where I'm based. And I do have a dedication where I thank you very much for opening the world to me, because I very much benefited. I grew up without a passport, and in my 20s, you got me that passport.
Kiernan, that's so cool. And
so I want to send it your way.
I don't travel much in the United States, but I go around to give my talks and stuff. And when I'm in Boston, I feel like this is it's as cool as a European city from a history point of view.
That's right. And this is a series that dives deep into history and super off the beaten path, scientific, academic, historical artifacts that you can find. It's a great series. I've used them in Europe as well, and had the editor on and pitched him, and he said, "Great, you should write it." And there we go.
What's it called again?
It's called Secret Boston. An unusual guide.
Good luck. Thanks for that. And,
Thank you very much.
Best wishes in your work. And it's always nice to talk to you. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
Well, Ryan, there it is. Rick I mean, it's almost hard to go on broadcasting after you speak to Rick Steves. I'm sweating.
Yeah, that was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much, Rick, for coming on. And folks got to check out the book, On the Hippie Trail. Link in the show notes. I've been thinking a lot, Kiernan. I use my kind of camera roll, as my way to remember things.
Of course, yeah.
But I am, inspired to do a little more writing, to help sort of fill out those memories, because a lot happens, and you don't take pictures of everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're spoiled today in how much photography we can take. I do think, are you more likely to go back and look at those photographs or read your diaries? I mean, he had but he had not looked at these diaries for 40 years. And I think that I've been very sporadic in recording my journeys. But sometimes I do sit down when I get back and I do a full write-up, or even just bullet points of memorable moments. I love that in his journals, he records quotations from people he's interacted with, just little snippets of thoughtful things that he wants to remember. And he has some just real inspirational keepers in the full book. He mentioned a couple in the interview. And so I am going to really try to commit to sit down and do that full write-up following trips now. My first opportunity will be in June when I'm off to Alaska. But also, you and I have the benefit of, we record a lot of our memories here on the podcast. And this is going to be a great historical document for us to listen back to in 40 years, for our kids and well, not your kids, but my kids. Well, I mean, Ryan, I don't know, the way you're doing it is not kid. Yeah, anyway, for posterity, whatever form that takes for you and for me. And I do feel very lucky that we have spent the 6 years doing this, because many of our memories are here. And, maybe someday the book will be written.
Yeah, we can get ChatGPT to take all the transcripts and turn it into an amazing book.
Never. I can spot your ChatGPTs far away. Those LinkedIn posts you're putting up. Oh God! All right, everybody. What? Go ahead.
We got a message on the Insta like a week and a half ago. Someone suggesting that they come on. They talk about using ChatGPT for trip planning. And we've done an episode on that early in the ChatGPT life cycle. And I use ChatGPT to work on my travel schedule. But one thing I want to flag to folks is it is terrible at knowing if something is open or not.
Ooh,
and it will recommend museums that closed during COVID. That's happened to me multiple times.
Oh yeah, that happened to me a lot during the writing process for Secret Boston. Lots of stuff, and a lot of places that close, they don't take down everything they have online, so they still look open.
yeah, you'd have to be a human and be able to actually say, hey, wait a minute, nobody's commented about this thing for a year and a half.
Right. Right.
And the other thing it does is it just doesn't actually know what days something is open, and it will confidently say, you can go to this museum on this day. And then, when you go to the museum's website, it clearly is closed on Mondays or Sundays or whatever it is. So I warn people, ChatGPT is fun for brainstorming travel, but not for setting that itinerary.
Well, and it's good for, as far as our exploration goes, it's good for mainstream, typical, top 10 sort of places you need to see. And it is quite disappointing for the more obscure or the more secret treasures. So, and in a way, I'm encouraged about that, because I think that it means that you do have to do some research. You have to put in a little elbow grease. You have to listen to Out of Office to get those special places.
If ChatGPT listened to us, it would be way better at travel.
Oh, I'm sure it will get there. I'm sure it will get there. In fact, I'm sure we're about a year away from you suggesting, what if we don't do the pod? We just let ChatGPT recreate our voices and go from there. But Ryan, we can't dilly dally anymore. So it is time. Sorry. Oh. It's we're here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because we come together to share. You and I each bring something. It could be anything. It could be a piece of gear. It could be an anecdote. It could be a recommendation. It could be a podcast. It could be a book. Usually it's something from Rick Steves, but it could be anything as long as it meets one criterion. It must inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So Ryan, I'm going to ask you, for the 200th time, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kiernan. It's a little bit of a downer, but
oh God.
You probably heard about the helicopter accident that happened last week in New York. The video is so frightening. It's
horrible.
A sad story. And I was wondering, have you ever done a helicopter tour?
No, I've never been in a helicopter. I have. There is a possibility I would do one on the Alaska trip in June. I haven't booked it yet, so maybe it's not going to be available. But to be honest, there were simultaneous to the helicopter tour, I could do kayaking, and I really like kayaking, and so I think I'd like that on the ground experience better than seeing a glacier from the air, because I've seen glaciers from high heights. I've done great hikes with glaciers, so I don't really feel the need to get up in the helicopter. But also, I guess I probably would think twice after seeing that video.
Well, I think, I was reading a lot of, helicopter pilots and people talking about helicopters, and all these helicopters that they have in New York, these are really old helicopters. And, it just doesn't seem like helicopter tours are all that safe, really. So I don't know that I would want to go on one. I've never been on one. I've been in places like in Vegas, or, that's a big thing. You go the helicopter tour to the dam and everything. But I don't know. I just feel like in New York, how busy that sky is. It's no place for kind of like old helicopters flying around. And I hope that they do something about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it does feel like there's a lot of air traffic problems these days. It feels like once every other week, we're getting some sort of air disaster that is, it isn't supposed to be this common. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's the regulations aren't being tight enough. I don't know if people are cutting corners. I'm very confused and a little bit nervous.
Yeah, it's not a great time to do things like that. You have a much happier last stop though, because nothing makes you and I happier than when a new one of these is birthed into the universe.
Exactly. What could that mean? I do, Ryan. Yes, my last stop is very upbeat and very exciting, and it ties back to something in our history. So you and I have both spent time in Barcelona, and we actually have a pretty early episode about Gaudi's architecture in Barcelona and where to explore, and a little bit about his biography. And Gaudi, if for those who don't know, is a modern architect from Catalan. And his great work is the Sagrada Familia Basilica, which is you can see everywhere in Barcelona, and it almost looks like this sandcastle, and it's this enormous, beautiful Catholic church. And some art critics are saying this is sort of the last great church that will be built, because obviously it's taken so many years. What's very exciting and very interesting is that Pope Francis has just said that Gaudi is venerable. And for anybody who knows Catholicism, this is the stepping stone to sainthood. So before you're a saint, you're venerable, you're venerated. And this means that Gaudi, we could see him become a saint. And so what I find so interesting about this is there's this subset of Catholic saints who have been artists, but they're really a very small list. The one
not even Michelangelo is a saint.
No. You really have to. Yeah, I mean, you've really got to. Yeah, that's which is a pretty good one. Which you'll be able to confirm in a week.
I'm excited.
Saint Hildegard is one that came to my mind. She's famous as a composer. She was a 12th century abbess. And in fact, I just recently saw a really good Christmas ornament of her I've been meaning to pick up. That's outside of the Gaudi point. You and I love Gaudi's really whimsical, almost Dr. Seussy sort of style. It's very colorful. It's got lots of interesting curves. We've both visited the Sagrada Familia. You've been inside the Sagrada Familia, right?
Yeah, I have. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. It's one of the most memorable church experiences that you could possibly have. And it's super timely, too, because the church is set to be completed in 2026, which is incredible. I mean, this has been going on for well over a century. I mean, Ryan, construction on the Sagrada Familia started in 1882. 1882, and it's still been going on. But the final towers are rising up above Barcelona, and it
really slowly. I saw. Well, yeah. You can see the tower, as I was just there, so you can see it. And then they have a sketch of what it's going to look like. And I thought they were getting close to finish, but they're missing like two really big tower sections. And
listen, 2026, it's going to happen.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
I'll tell you why it's going to happen.
If that happens, that's his miracle.
Okay. All right. So you're jumping ahead. So here's the major thing. 2026 is the centennial of his death. So I know they are going to work as hard as possible to hit that deadline and have the official opening of the completed church, which I have to say, I have this little dream, Ryan, that you and I might go there in its first year of existence together. But we'll talk about that off pod and see if it's at all feasible. But here's the thing. Here's the hot tip from this last stop, which is the difference between a person who is venerated and a person who is a saint is that they need to have miracles attributed to them. So this venerated list is a real hot list. So if you've got a disease you're looking to be cured or something that just seems impossible, now you've got to start praying to Gaudi. And if you can get a verified miracle by the Catholic Church, you might just be the person who makes the difference between Gaudi being venerated and Saint Gaudi.
I just think that Gaudi should focus all his miracle energy on getting.
I like that idea, Ryan. Finished. My hands are clasped together. I am ready to pray for that. And I think I might even throw in, is there a way before Ryan returns to the U.S. to just get him back to Dracula's castle? Just, I don't know, a quick stopover so that we could have a full Romanian episode.
Do you know how far away Romania is from anything?
Listen, what I know is that for the venerated Gaudi, time and distance does not matter. He will come through for us. Ryan, so while we wait for you to return to Romania, what's very exciting is that while we're going to be working on that Paris episode, and it's going to come very soon, next episode, we're going to be talking about Rome, which is a place that I visited. When we did the Vatican episode, we said we need a separate episode just for Rome, and you will be fresh from Roma.
I will be fresh from Roma. I've booked my tickets. I'm getting a tour of the Vatican, I think in Swedish or whatever was available. And I'm super excited.
And you'll be doing the whole episode in Swedish, of course.
Yes.
This is where AI can be useful. AI should be able to listen to that Swedish and translate it in your ear. This is where we need AI in travel.
Absolutely. It's coming.
So Rome is next up.
Yes.
Now you say, until then, I'm Ryan Davis. And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear venerated Gaudi, please let Out of Office make a profit before episode 300.